Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Katie Huff with Setting Yourself Free, a podcast that we want you to be set free from whatever is holding you back from being, doing, and having all that God created you to be. And I am so excited to have Dr. Mark Sherwood here today to share with you some very interesting situations that we don't even probably realize that we're in when it comes to blue light and the effect on everything in our body. And so he is an absolute expert on this, and you'll be able to see the fact that he has his blue light glasses on, where he's going to share with you why and why we all should pretty much consider this. So this is going to be full of nuggets. So I'd encourage you to follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Spotify and Apple and X and Instagram because we don't want you to miss any information. And also, I want to say right up front for the women that are watching, the women's retreat is May 4th through the 7th in Paradise, Montana. And you're going to want to go to katy-huff.com/events. Once again, katy-huff.com/events and get registered to come and be set free in Paradise, Montana. So thank you, Dr. Sherwood. And obviously, they all need to go to sherwood.tv for all kinds of wonderful information, lots of supplements to make you be healing and healthy and feeling much better than you possibly could. So thank you, Dr. Sherwood, for your heart to serve again and again and just educating us on how to live a healthier life. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me as always. And I do encourage everyone listening to pack your bags and go to Paradise, Montana. No question. Because look, we've been working with you and been a fortunate guest on your show here for a long time now. And thank you for trusting us with that. So obviously, we appreciate your message and honored to be a part of it.
Well, it's truly a blessing, and I'm grateful. And just to be able for us to come together and serve the population that are watching, that they would gain something from it, to be able to pivot and make their life better. So that's
Yeah,
what it's all
and
about.
we need to get that done because we're obviously, as a society, not going in the right direction. I mean, we've sort of articulated that, shown that, proved that time and time again. And you don't have to look very far for the proving of what I just said. You can look at the own statistics we carry, with mortality rates and causes of death and the health of this nation and the health of the world. It's not going in the right direction. And
Mm-mm.
part of that is definitely how we perceive things, how that wonderful slash sometimes dangerous hormone called cortisol can affect us, what
Mhm.
it does to us, what it doesn't do to us, what we need to have, and what we don't. But obviously, there's something going on with our society as it pertains to our health, and I think these things are often not addressed.
Absolutely. And people I don't even think people know where to even go to get
Mm.
the right information. That's why, again, Sherwood.tv is the right information. And that's why you're going to want to check out that website because there's so much information that is speaking truth. And there's so much static, if you will, in the world. And it's like there's
Mm.
so much coming at people that it's just like, okay, what is the right course of action? And not being, aware of what it possibly can be because there's so much information out there.
It
And not
is.
all of it is good. Not all of it is good.
Yeah, it's a bunch of noise, man. I mean, when you're talking about trying to go a direction, whether it be driving a car or walking or whatever, if you're distracted, you're not going to get there. And
Right.
that's what that noise is. It's distracting. And we are trying on a continual basis, as you know, to provide pieces and series of information that give people the opportunity to make better choices so they get back on the pathway, stay on the pathway, and reach their goals in life, which, that can cross the spectrum of things, but I think certainly health is something that should be normal and should
Mm.
not be abnormal. And right now it really is abnormal. And, first thing that I talk about I mean, you mentioned in the intro, I was wearing my blue blocker glasses.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a few reasons why I do that. I think number one to talk about is sleep. We know that
Mhm.
in sleep, we have an opportunity because we're fasted to have restoration, rebuilding, regeneration, restructuring, reconstruction, the whole bit. And that rebuilding, restructuring, healing, all that can only happen when we're in a fasted rested state. And that's very key. Fasted and rested states can equate to healing. Well,
Mm,
what are some implications that affect the fasted and rested state effectiveness or even duration? Well, one is the sleep component. I mean, if we have so much cortisol going on, which is a hormone, again produced from melatonin, I mean from cortisol or from cholesterol, sorry, and then we have the opposite of this, melatonin, which should be produced at night. You can't produce both cortisol and melatonin at the same time.
mm,
So if you have a lot of cortisol going on, which can happen from the blue light coming from screens, that can impair sleep, which impairs all those functions I just talked about.
right. So I don't think people even stop to pause to even think about all of the time that they're spending in front of a computer, a TV, where all this blue light is impacting us.
No, they're not. And frankly, I didn't either until I started studying, and just paying attention to it.
Right.
So the blue light from the screens, even right now, um, screens not just being computer, not just being TV, but also your personal cellular device. They emit, generally speaking, at a temperature, a brightness in blue, 5,500, even back down to 5,000 Kelvin. Now, what that means is people are like, well, what does that mean? How does it apply to me? Well, compare it to the noonday sun. It's
Mm,
hard to look up that noonday sun because you're so like blinded by it all. Like that song, Blinded by the Light, so to
yeah,
speak, right? Well,
right.
what happens is the sun emits that Kelvin temperature at 3,000 to 3,500. And that is cooler or less potent on our eyes and our systems of the body than the blue light. And what does that all mean? It means that at night, when we're watching TV or looking at the cell phone or looking at the computer to try to quote unquote wind down and that blue light's coming, in the evening time we should be producing melatonin, but that immediate cortisol synthesis, which is coming from the blue light, you know, sort of trigger, is going to inhibit melatonin production. So, you know, I've started to kind of wear these blue blocker glasses to see if, that would help with depth of sleep on a consistency. And people need to know you can actually get little programs on your cell phone and screens to dim out, to turn it down to a more auburn yellow color, which so I'm looking at right now. I mean, I'm seeing the screen behind you, the Aurora Borealis. It's a little bit auburn color, So, but it's okay because I can still function, but that pressure on the blue light from the blue light on my eyes is being minimized right now.
Which is good. And what we should be doing is minimizing it because it's
It is.
too much of a good thing is not good.
Yeah, we know we need the sun. I don't want to make people think the
Right.
sun's bad because it's not. But we need the sun at certain times and we need the moon at certain times. And go back to the way, why did God create the sun? Why did he create day? Why did he create night? I'm sure he had a reason for that. And it's to create the proper rhythm in not just the seasons of the universe, but the seasons of our bodies. And so you want to promote harmony and or harmony or like symphony like behavior, things being in balance. And how do we do that? We have to think about how that affects us. And that's not the only thing that drives cortisol. We got to understand. You mentioned just the very idea of picking up the cell phone and being inundated with these one-way news, breaking news conversations all the time.
Right.
Those also, when we look down there at that thing, we have an addictive component to that, and people can argue on that, but try to put your phone away for a day and not look at it.
Oh
That would
yeah.
be hard,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So there is sort of this pattern of habits or habitual behavior slash addiction that can drive cortisol too, because typically what's being broadcast that we're drawn to, and we got to be honest about this, I had to check my own heart at it. Is it something that makes me happy, something that makes me hopeful, or something that potentially can fill me with anxiety or negative? And most of the time, what's broadcast is not positive, it's negative. You can look at mainstream news, you can look at even the all the news networks that are not mainstream, whatever that means. It's mostly negative. And I just don't see how that can be a good thing for human beings to be bombarded with that all the time. And because it does produce cortisol. So now we talked about cortisol from all the devices, cortisol from the stress of it all and the perception.
Mm.
And then I guess you go to the third stage. What about the cortisol that's produced from traumas and anxiety we have in life just because of life experiences we've all had?
Right. And I would think that most people don't connect those dots.
Well, we need to because, like,
Exactly.
there's a lot of talk out there about, even let's just look at the simple uh, pathophysiological process called type 2 diabetes. It's too much blood sugar, right? We know that. Too much blood sugar, too much time. And we know that's driven partly from or mostly from our diet.
Hmm.
But did you know that that can also occur from all the things I just laid out? Because cortisol is known as a glucocorticoid, gluco root for glucose, because cortisol has to, by its nature, because it's a survival hormone. We have to have it to live, by the way. So I'm not saying suppress it. We have to have it to live. We have to have it for proper immune function. But if it's overdone, if we are in a hyper cortisolemic or cortisolism state all the time, we're going to be driving blood sugar. So then
Right.
there's another thing on there, and that can help drive this, what I call a cortisol belly or cortisol weight, which drives constant chronic systemic inflammation, which is
Mhm.
tied to every disease processes. So you can look at this and start connecting the dots. I mean, just from a reasonable, let's call ourselves medical or physiological detectives, if you will. And we have to really understand that these things do connect. And if we don't start thinking like that, we're going to be stuck in the box of silo system medicine, which we are right now in our society. Because if we have a stress problem, well, gosh, that's an antidepressant shortage, don't you? Right. And so you go on and on down this pathway. And so you can see how on one side it sounds very reasonable, the other side it sounds very, very irrational.
Right. Right. And it's interesting that people, in general, take the least path of resistance.
Oh,
And so
well,
that's like
the
the fast
Bible,
foods and all of the different ways that they're poisoning their system, which
I
is
always
not
go
good.
back to the Bible in Matthew 7:13 and 14 that talks about the narrow road and the wide road.
Yeah.
And we think, well, that's just talking about salvation. No, it's not talking about just the destination. It's
Right.
talking about the road to the destination. And
Yes.
so people miss that whole darn thing, and they think, well, one day, Sister Katie, I'm going to go to heaven, and all this pain's going to go away. Okay, fine. But what about between now and then? Isn't there something there? Isn't
Right.
there something we're supposed to do? So that narrow road that is not the path of least resistance. It's actually the path of greatest resistance. And,
Mm.
and I'll tell you why that's the greatest strength you can have in just a moment. But the wide road is a path of least resistance because it's easy.
Right.
Everybody's doing it. It's
Right.
like the comparison trap. Well, I'm better than, Katie. I'm better than Sister Jane or Jim. I'm better than them. So it's like a big old wide road of just a pot of confusion, and everybody's on it. And the Bible says clearly that many are on that road. And it
Right.
says, few seek to find the narrow road and few are on it. So, when you look at the path of greatest resistance, you work out, I work out, my
Mhm.
wife works out. How do we gain strength? You can't do that without resistance.
No.
So
No.
your faith is a muscle too,
Yeah, it is.
and we have to exercise that thing. And the only way to get it better is to embrace the idea of resistance for the opportunity of growth.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm sitting here obviously thinking about friends and family and
Oh,
where they're at and what their priorities are. And obviously, being on that narrow road takes time, energy, and effort. And I mean, it's like you being the great physician that you are, it's just like you see that every day with your patients that come in. And thank God
I
you're
do.
a functional physician as well, where you're doing, okay, let's go back to the root cause of
Well,
making your organs and your body function the way it was created.
you'll find this fascinating. What I'm getting ready to say, and this was not scripted, obviously, folks, by the way. Um, when you go to the conventional or modern day system of medicine,
Right.
look, you're geared, you're there to find out, quote unquote, right, what's wrong, and you're
Hmm.
looking for a diagnosis of, quote unquote, what's wrong. So your whole purpose for being there is a negative one. It's not a
Hmm.
positive one. Then once you get a diagnosis, you're taught to embrace that, that becomes a good thing. And my submission is that becomes a bad thing because then it
Exactly.
becomes the thing that you talk about all the time. And when you think and you own a diagnosis, that becomes who you are. It's like your new ID card.
Right.
When you have a negative diagnosis, does that create a cortisol reaction? You bet it does.
It does.
You bet it does. So we work very hard to not embrace. We're not saying you don't, you know, you don't embrace the concept of diagnosis because you got to know what the dysfunctional area or areas are, a lot of times. But you want to focus on what's right
Right.
because what's right provides hope.
Right.
And
Exactly.
people need to know that hope and anxiety don't exist in the same breath like oil and water, like faith and fear. So think hope, anxiety, oil and water, that you can't mix those together. So how do you have hope in the middle of an anxiety-filled environment? And then, what happens the next step in this is that people begin to talk like that. And
Hmm.
you go to them, how you doing? Well, my bursitis is still acting up. Well, my backache's still, and it becomes the first line thinking. It becomes the first conversation piece. And what one puts their focus upon will begin to
Expand.
focus upon them.
And it expands. The more you
That's
focus
right. It
on
gets
it, it
bigger.
expands.
It's like gas in a fire.
Right.
It's
And
like, oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say the statement that, it is what it is such a defeatist statement where it's just like it's almost like they have no choice. And it's just like you do have a choice in everything that we do. Some of it may take a little bit more effort because you have to think about it versus just reacting and saying, well, what pill can I take
You
to make
you
it
do.
better?
And I've learned this too. This is interesting, that even in the walk of life, on this idea of, you know, faith, fear, hope, anxiety,
Mm,
cortisol, or stress or relaxation. When I think about this from, we're taught this sometime in church circles. Well, you just need to be talking, you need to be rebuking the devil at all times. Okay, fine. That's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It is what it is. I use that term right there, see, just
right?
intentionally. But
Yeah,
so when it becomes it is what it is, and you mentioned that rebuking the devil, we're talking to and about the devil all the time
right,
instead of looking at, God's goodness or things we don't understand or things we want to question him about. It's better to have a conversation with the father of faith
mm,
than the father of lies. So, this duality of this battle goes on beyond just, blue blocker glasses and sleep. It's a societal thing right now.
yeah. I mean, it's just like, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus came to give us life into the fullest. So what
Yeah.
you focus on expands. So if you continually look to the word of life and to, to the best possibility versus, the death of focusing on disease. It's dis-ease,
Oh,
and you're
yeah,
living in
big
it.
time. You are. And dis-ease is the thing. It's, people can take the word apart, DIS, make a hyphen there and put ease, and it's a state of lack of peace. And so
Exactly.
the body, we talk about this as we perceive it in our minds and our brains and our thought process even now. But think about our body as an entire being. And what if the body is inundated with anxiety that we didn't, we can't really articulate? We just know it's not right. And so that happens a lot too in people's lives today because we're not taught a different way. And when you're
Right.
not taught a different way, that's all you know. And
Right.
it becomes something that is expected. And what you begin to expect becomes your standard.
Right.
So
And,
we talk to
and
people all the time about changing that standard.
And it's about the mantra. It's just like change your
Totally.
mantra. Instead of saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, start saying, God created me to be healthy and whole and focus on that because words have meaning. And the more you focus on them, the bigger it gets. So focus on the
Mhm.
positive of, doing something that is going to be healthy, obviously, by not being on your phone all day long or going out
Oh,
for a walk and getting fresh air and not focusing on the negative because it'll expand.
It will. And, even you mentioned words, what do those do to the environment? I mean, we know they are creative forces. We
Yes.
know the power of life and death is
In the
in the
tongue.
tongue or the words.
Yep.
So what does that mean to us physiologically? It means this is when we, and it's been proven time and time again, when we speak about hope, we talk hopefully, and we're not perpetually bombarding us with this hopeless thing. We have a expression from our genetic level that creates some kind of synthesis towards hope, because when we don't have hope, our cells feel that. They go into a place of, let's say, hibernation, because everything around that cell in the environment is one of fear and anxiety.
Hmm.
And that does not just change your mind, that changes all cellular structures and its response from a genetic level.
Right. Right. It's just, every day we get to start over and speak
Yeah.
truth in life. And I always say we have an opportunity to speak life or death is in the tongue and speak life and to yourself and to others. And when you catch yourself, obviously, I try to tell myself this, okay, I'm going down that negative path. I need to
Yeah.
stop and I pause and I pray and until I have
Yeah.
peace. My three P's: pause, pray, and have peace. So, and
We
change
can
that
all fall down
trajectory.
that
Yes.
trap you're talking about. There's no, who's bullying who, man? That's
Yeah.
life is tough.
Yes.
It was not supposed to be easy. But getting through life is only possible in this way of improvement by following that narrow road. Otherwise, it gets even more tough.
Right.
And I hope that people understand the difference. That's the thing. And we always try to communicate information, whether it be on these podcasts or live or wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever platform we're on, that there is a different way. And you can't make people pick. You can't make them do anything. But that's why I kind of laugh at the "Make America Healthy Again" mantra. Make. You can't make anybody do anything, but you can give them information that
Yeah.
allows them to make a better choice,
Right.
and maybe with full disclosure, God can use that and they make better choices.
Right. Right. So it's all about making good choices at all times. And, none of us are perfect. There was only one perfect man that walked this earth. His
Yeah.
name was Jesus. But, again, it's like if you get bucked off the horse, you get another chance to get back on and ride. So don't just get bucked off and stay there. Get back on and ride where you can, and feel better and have more
Hmm.
energy and be able to do more for yourself, your family, your grandbabies, whatever makeup you have in your family. Because,
Hmm.
you don't get a do-over. There's no do-overs.
No. One of my favorite sayings, or way to describe what you just said is like this: life is a race, and there's a whole bunch of people running, a whole bunch of people walking, and maybe some people crawling, but it's a big old race. Well, in that race of life, sometime, whether through your own fault, through the fault of others, you're going to fall down.
Right.
And when you fall down, you're going to you're going to skin your leg, and you might see a little blood sometimes. And at that moment in time, you really have three choices. One, you can get all angry about it and think the race is for nothing. Why run the race? And you can go back and try to run the whole darn thing again, living in the past. Or choice number two, you can lay there, cry about it, whine about it, complain about it to people coming by, and ain't nobody going to stop, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Or number three, you can decide to get back up, bloody and all, and keep on running. And I think looking at one, two, three, the only real option for us is choice three.
Right.
Because if we don't, the other two are living in past or present shame,
Mhm.
past or present failure. And you never can go back and redo stuff. We just can't do that. I wish that I could. I know you wish
Right.
that you could.
We all would.
But you just can't. So what do you do with that? You just take that in this race like that road, and it's part of the resistance that you face, the pressure that you face, and you have to keep on going because that can make you better and stronger. So maybe you might not fall down as much.
Exactly. Exactly. So this whole circle that we talked about, obviously, all of these emotions to go back
Hmm.
to cortisol are going to either raise
Yes,
cortisol or they're going to decrease it. And
that's right.
that's not like
And
it's like making better choices.
well, and cortisol again, I want to point out this the second time I've said this for emphasis. It's a hormone we must have for survival. But if we have it over and above, it's going to create a lot of glucose, a lot of inflammation, a lot of eventual fat accumulation or fat accumulation increase, right? And then eventually it's going to tax your adrenals so much, and let's say you don't create it. Well, that's just as bad because then you're not able to survive. So
Right.
it becomes a system where I've seen people that have too much. And again, we know what that results in. And then I've seen people have too little because of too much production over time or autoimmunity or something like that. Then they have to take what? Hydrocortisone. We know
Right.
that's a medicine that people take because I'm so tired. Well,
Mm.
what does that do? That's taking cortisol. So that creates higher blood sugar, so the cycle goes back up. So there's no answers in medicine for this phenomena. The only
Mm.
answer is really in our own behavior and recognizing some of the little nuances and truths that I've just said and saying, okay, I need to look at my own life and go, okay, what am I doing? And how is it, am I hyper focused or hyper driven by cortisol? And if I am, I've got to watch that.
Right. So, what are some action steps for
Hmm.
people to have healthy cortisol by their own body's production and activities that
Yeah,
create that? I
good
know that you
question.
have some great sources and examples of what we all should do.
I do, and let's talk practical. Let's talk practical steps here. I think that's very important. Number one, you have to work on enhancing quality and depth of sleep. And of
Mm,
course, all we've talked about behind that is important. Now, realize that sleep needs to be 7 to 8 hours. And people say, "Well, I don't have time to sleep, or I don't sleep that long." Well, to the first person, I'd say you don't have time, then I have time. To the second person, that may be true. That doesn't mean it's right. So you feel free to utilize everything we talked about today, blue blocker glasses. You can get some programs to block down the yellow or blue light in your phones and stuff like that. You can. And thirdly, you can take melatonin. That's not a bad thing because the little gland that produces the initiates the production of a melatonin is called the pineal gland. And we need to know that thing that sits behind our eyeballs, it calcifies or atrophies by age as time goes on. So as time goes on, we produce less. Could that be a key mechanism to the increased aging phenomena?
mm,
Could be because we're driving down the production of cortisol or melatonin and we're having too much cortisol activation. So the sleep phenomenon needs to be really factored in. That's number one.
okay.
Number two, we have to slow down when we eat. And I'm really one to pot calling the kettle black because sometimes I'll try to scarf a meal down in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it right because I'm eating stressed. When you eat stressed, you don't digest
Mm,
properly. There, you don't get the nutrients from that can be used in combination of oxygen to create energy. So you can actually gain weight like that. You can actually get uh, in a place of suboptimal nutrition like that. And even gut function is not
mm,
good. So that consumption of food is a really good thing. Slow down. And I tell people, you might have saw me drinking on my little hydrogen water, to
yeah.
sip a little water between bites.
Yeah.
Carry on a conversation. 20 minutes or more to complete a meal. That's number two. And number three, we need to move. You mentioned that a moment
Mm,
ago. Get outside,
mhm,
walk, exercise. And I get a little bit weirded out when people say, I've got to go to the gym. No, you don't. You can. And sometimes that's good if you want to, but you don't have to. Movement is life. Activity is what we do when we live. Lack of movement is rigor mortis. But the movement has been shown over time. Studies that have dictated using Prozac to slow down anxiety or depression compared to good old-fashioned walking. 100% of the time in the analysis, walking has worked better.
mm,
So we've talked about sleep, nutrition, and
right.
movement. And I
Yeah.
think number four, to round all that up, is we have to be very cautious about you know, our environment, our environment of what we say, who
Mm.
we're around, and what we do. That would be all encompassed in there. And then even what we listen to. So it's really controlling the gates of the eyes, the ears, the mouth, and a really circle of influence. Because if we are around a bunch of anxiety-ridden situations, noises, or people, we typically become like that.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so we've got to watch all that. So it's really those four areas from a practical standpoint.
absolutely. You either become what they are,
Yeah.
or they become what you are. So you again,
Hmm.
what you speak, what you think, what you talk about. I'll never forget. I was on some uh, Christian podcast that was saying, and I don't know how you feel about this, and some people go, but when we complain, we open the door for spiritual attacks. And, Satan loves to tap dance on us, so be careful what you
Hmm.
speak, be careful what you hear, and
Yeah.
the environment that you're in. Like you're saying, which I don't
Mhm.
think, I mean, people may get the slowing down with, they get the nutrition element, they get the sleep element, they get the movement element, but this fourth one, I don't
No.
think they even remotely focus on that at all. And really, we need to, because you become the average of the people that you're around. Or
Yeah,
not.
it's funny. We were even talking just before we went on here live a moment ago that I watched this occur in the Christian space a lot from even Christian speakers because I've had a chance to meet a lot of them
Right,
and I've watched them struggle with this very element right here because they're so driven towards when is your next speaking engagement going to be because their income is tied to that instead
exactly.
of so it becomes a fear-based worrisome anxiety-riddled situation. So it's always hustling, 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 hustling. Now you're good at what you do, you're gifted at what you do, you're called to do that. But is it worth the pursuit they're in? And should you have to work that hard to do it? Because if you're called to do it, I suppose, that kind of makes sense that God will provide for that, wouldn't it? Why do you
Right.
have to go make it happen? And so I've watched that occur, that phenomenon. I've talked to a lot of people, telling them, speaking of blue light in the face, maybe. Um, but it's really hard to connect because you're right. We don't think about, all these things that we do, how it affects our physical and even our spiritual health.
Big time. Mind, body, spirit, for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm.
It is. Well, this has been amazing. I ask you, is there anything else you want to tie this incredible conversation up with a bow before we let people take a deep dive in what we've shared with them to see what they need to do to be healthier?
Well, there was a lot we talked about. I really encourage people with this particular episode to go back and listen to every bit of it. And it's not meant to be judgmental or accusatory. It's meant to be introspectively brought into the life, And so I think if people really, really, really want to be healthy, if they say, I really want to be healthy and have a healthy life, then this part cannot be neglected. And we've given people here practical, doable steps that cost zero. And if
Mhm.
you buy glasses, you could probably get these for a whopping $10. And so, these cost a little more than that because my wife wanted me to be somewhat stylish. But the bottom line is, this is ignored, but
Yeah.
it creates so much effects, both good and bad, on our overall health. And I think that this is the real opportunity we have today is right in this area, quite frankly.
Awesome. So my question is, how often are you wearing them? Are you wearing them constantly?
Yeah. No, I'm not
Or
wearing them constantly. I'm just kind of
yeah.
been wearing them when I've been around the screen a lot, and kind of
Okay.
just trust the instincts. And certainly as we near the evening time,
Mm,
then I will wear them more frequently if I'm on screens.
sure.
But during the daytime, not all day or anything like that. Probably maybe a third of the time, probably. And I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if it's too much. I mean, I'm just kind of going through the learning phase of all the things that we can do.
The experiential
Yeah,
process to find out
ex-
what is the good line that will make the greatest results.
exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Sherwood. You are always such a breath of fresh air and such inspiration and encouragement for people and especially me. And I just
Hmm.
am grateful that all of you that are watching this, that you are going to take steps to live a healthier life and be set free from all of the disease that is affecting your life. And so you can have a much healthier life. So this is Katie F. Mortensen with Katie F. Ministries and Setting Yourself Free. Please go to Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple, Instagram, and of course, go to Sherwood.tv and go to katy-huff.com/events and come to Paradise, Montana in May. And so with that, I say God bless you and thank you for all of your education and support for all of us. Thank you, Dr. Sherwood.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
My name is Katie Huff Mortensen, and my ministry is Katie Huff Ministries out of Lolo, Montana. Unfortunately, women in general, a lot of times will have self-betrayal and shame and settling in their careers or in their relationships. And so I am in the process of helping them to be, do, and have all God created them to be, and to set themselves free from whatever is holding them back.
My wife went to her women's retreat and she came back a different woman. She had so much more confidence.
I would say in general, they do not see or recognize how they're worth. They're worthy of it all. And they've been, beat down from a career or a relationship or family relationships, or they're just shouldering so much of the past is one big thing. And then the other thing is not realizing who they are in the eyes of Christ, that they are forgiven, they are loved unconditionally, that there are no mistakes, there's only lessons, and that God's plan is so perfect. And so they go from walking in clay, not sure, a little depressed, sad, feeling terrible about their past and being stuck and not moving forward, knowing that there's something much bigger for them in the future.
I had the wonderful chance to meet Katie when I went to a conference, and the first thing I noticed about her is she had an amazing energy.
Well, great people like the women that have come in the past and continue to come is that they are coming because they know that there is light at the end of their struggle.
She's an awesome leader, a mentor.
I have seen over the last 14 years of doing this, women come in broken and they are sad and depressed, frustrated, and they walk out smiling. They've had a breakthrough of what they can be, do, and have.
Attend her retreat and you will never be the same.
I have known Katie Huff Mortensen for about 16 years, and she is just an amazing leader.
It is pretty incredible. It's in Paradise, Montana, and that's not by chance. It's an absolutely gorgeous surrounding. There's a hot springs there that women can relax in between sessions. They can have their cup of coffee in the morning in the hot springs. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the food is incredible. We are in a Camp Bighorn is the name of the location, and it is a Christian campsite. We have 2 sessions in the morning, we have 1 in the afternoon, and then this past year we actually did a ropes course where it was suspending ourselves and getting over fear, which was a huge stretch of your courage to be set free. And in this fall of last year, we actually went floating down the river in rafts as an excursion. We have the Bison Refuge as another excursion. So there's a big mix of, education and support and sessions, followed by outings and relaxation, great food, great camaraderie, sisterhood, where people feel very safe and they have major breakthroughs. They can buy tickets at Eventbrite under Katie-Huff Ministries. So katy-huff.com is the website that they can go to get more information. So Katie-Huff, HUFF.com on my website, and they can see where it says events. And the cost depends on their lodging in the sense that they have 3 different tiers of lodging. They can be on the river, and that is the best view. You're on the river. The second one is in a cabin with 2 queen beds, and then a third option. So the rooming is the difference between anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for those 4 days. And it includes everything in the food and the adventures and the lodging. I want you to go to katy-huff.com/events and fill out the form so I can call you and lead you from where you are today to the event in May 4th through the 7th, 2025 in Paradise, Montana, which is an incredible location where you will be set free to live your best life ever.